Hello everyone, welcome back. This video is the first episode of a series that I plan to make. I built the famous World War II Japanese fighter, the A6M2 from Eduard in 1:48 scale. This kit is quite a new tool from Eduard, and as we can expect, the quality is excellent. We can build a perfect model from the box. If you are familiar with this channel, you may have noticed that I'm a big fan of upgrade sets and fine details. Because of this, I have invested in nearly all the upgrade sets for this kit. In this first video, I show you how I build a 3D printed cockpit and the cockpit from the kit. I compare them and highlight the differences in details, in buildability and quality. The upgrade set contains 29 3D printed resin parts, a pre-painted PE sheet, a decal sheet and transparent film for the gun sight. The print quality is just fantastic and all the parts are highly detailed. I started to build by cutting off and cleaning all the parts from the sprues and from the print support. It's quite easy to cut off all the parts from the support if you have a good quality side cutter. I collected the parts in two little boxes to keep separately the kit parts and the 3D printed parts. There is no question that the 3D printed parts are way more detailed than the kit parts. It doesn't mean that the kit parts are not good enough, but the 3D printed parts are much better. Unfortunately, one part, the R49, the fuel hand pump lever, was missing from the package. It probably broke down during packing. Despite the missing resin part, the box contained an unexpected bonus extra printed block for R61, 62 and R63, so I have an extra throttle control, mixture control and gun sight. I plan to build a roof, the seaplane version of the Zero, sometimes, so this was a pleasant surprise as I can use these parts in a future build. After I carefully cleaned and separating all the parts, the two cockpits were ready to begin the assembly. My main criticism of the 3D resin parts is that all the details are printed in one block. Here the rudder pedals are printed along with the cockpit floor. I wanted to put them in an offset position, so I had to cut them off. And it wasn't easy. I used a thin 0.1 mm saw for this delicate surgery. Most of the modelers like to glue everything together and paint the details later. I like to paint the details separately and glue the parts together later. To make the kit parts and the 3D parts more realistic, I drilled all the lightning holes with my cheap mini drill. I use 0.3 to 0.6 mm drill bits. To make the missing details, I glued small styrene parts on the kit cockpit floor, using the 3D part as a reference. Then I used Mr. Color Silver for the undercoat. Mr. Color's paints are resilient, there is no need for chipping varnish. For the primary cockpit color, I used Tamiya Cockpit Green, and I used my trusty 0.3 mm Sparmax airbrush. For the bluish-greenish Otake coating color, I chose Mr. Hobby Metallic Blue-Green. On the internet there are hundreds of articles that we can clearly read, and we can see that lots of different shades of Otake coating were used during the production. There is no right or wrong shade. I used the H63 paint that Eduard recommended in the instructions. With a more rigid brush, the acrylic paint can easily be scratched back. Another solution is to use chipping varnish over the silver paint. If you don't want to muck around with this chipping technique, a simple dry brush technique also does the job. Just be careful that apply a very thin layer of silver over the main color. Here are the two seats. The shape of the two seats are quite similar. The 3D printed one is a bit more detailed and the edges are more realistic. Overall, the 3D printed one is better, but not significantly. Nice pre-painted PE seatbelts are included in the upgrade set. The ProfiPack kit also included PE seatbelts. The belts are a little bit different, but both of them are excellent. I cut them off and with the fine diamond file, I cleaned the excess. After I carefully bent them, I glued them with ordinary superglue. I like to use superglues that dry transparently. Now what do you think? Which one is better? With the fine brush, I painted all the tubes and wires in the cockpit floor, and with the toothpick and the needle, I carefully scratched back the top green color. The aircraft that I built is one of the Zeros that attacked Pearl Harbor on the 7th of December 1941. The plane was manufactured by Mitsubishi on the 4th of October 1941, so the machine was basically brand new. I didn't want to overkill the wear in the cockpit. It was only 2 months old on the day of the attack. So regarding these scratches, I concentrated on the areas of the seat and the cockpit floor at the rudder pedals. I also added a few missing cables on the kit's cockpit floor to make it busier. I use 0.2mm LED wires. I prefer LED wires if I don't need structural strength because they are much easier to form to the desired shape than copper wires. As before, I used the 3D printed parts as a reference. For painting, I used Mr. Color Silver. I painted these pipes and wires with a dry brush technique. The natural metallic grey color of the LED wire is a perfect base for the silver. I bent a 0.1mm nickel-silver rod for the rudder pedals cables. I made this upgrade for both cockpits. To make the rudder pedals more detailed, I combined the PE parts from the two sets. For example, I used the rudder pedal adjuster from the 3D set on the kit set. I didn't use the PE pedals because I prefer the more realistic plastic ones. The PE rudders are too flat for me. As always, I set the pedals a bit off position to make them more interesting. The kit instrument panel looks better to me than the 3D printed one. If you pause the video for a sec, you can see all the fine details around the instruments. Eduard provides multiple options for the instrument panels, pre-painted PE panel or decal. The Weekend Edition model doesn't have PE panel, but there is an excellent decal for the instruments in the box. I built both of the panels with the decals because in this way the instrument panel is more realistic to me. The PE panel is nice and detailed, but it's too flat for my taste. I cut out every single instrument from the sheet and applied them one by one. It's definitely more work, but in this way I could be 100% sure that all of the instrument decals are in the right place. By the way, the upgrade set combines the decals and the PE parts to make the panel even more interesting. After I finished applying all the decals and PE parts on both of the panels, I unified the surface with Tamiya Flat Clear. I left them dry properly, and then I dropped a drop of Tamiya Clear into every single instrument face to make them glossy. I used various paints and brushes to paint all the fine details around the cockpit. The upgrade set is definitely more detailed, but the kit parts are also really nice. For gluing the parts and the PE parts, I use superglue and gel superglue. I modified the connection of the control stick a bit because I wanted to position it in a pushed and off position. With a diamond file, I shaped the bottom to fit the stick in its new position. I filled the resulting gap with liquid putty and painted the bottom cover in wooden deck tan. Behind the cockpit back wall there are oxygen bottles. In the kit these bottles are separated parts. In the upgrade set they are printed along with the back wall. I like to paint the parts separately, so I prefer the kit version. However, the detail on the 3D printed ones are much better. I painted the bottles in rubber black and the valve section on them is dark copper. The seat height adjuster lever is on the right side of the seat. In the kit we have two options, a PE part and a plastic one. I chose the plastic one and I upgraded it with a couple of drilled holes. The PE part is also very nice, but it requires a little bit of work to bend it in a right shape. There is a rubber band running behind the seat as part of the seat height mechanism. The upgrade set's instruction manual clearly shows how to make it. Luckily, the kit cockpit back wall also has the two rollers, so it's easy to make it on the kit version as well. I use thin lead wire, but copper wire also does the job. It was a little bit tricky to shape the wire into the tight space, especially at the 3D printed part behind the seat. I recommend shape and fix one of the rollers, then fix another roller, and finally gluing the endpoints. It is worth the effort because the final result looks fantastic. For gluing I used super glue and painted it with Deck 10. I also modified the control stick in the kit cockpit. The control column is different from the 3D part. It's molded with the elevator pushrod, so I cut in the bottom of the column with a razor saw and bent the stick to the right place. Be careful, it's easy to break as it's so thin. I used light pressure while bending. After I finished the floor and the back wall, I started to build the side walls in the cockpit. Obviously the 3D parts are much more detailed than the kit parts, so I used all the 3D parts for this build. Throttle control, mixture control, elevator trim, electrical switchbox, radio, Morse board, and so on. An interesting fact about the throttle control is that the gun's trigger was not on the control stick, it was on the throttle control lever. It looks like a bicycle brake handle. The pilot could switch between the fuselage machine guns and the 20mm cannons in the wings with a little switch at the tip of the throttle handle. That is very different from the European or American design. This handle was originally made of wood, so I painted it mid-brown. After I painted all the fine details with the brush on the side walls, I covered the area with a layer of flat clear to create a nice base for weathering. As I mentioned, I built a 2-month-old aircraft, so I concentrated on shade differences, then scratches. I used oil paint this time. 502 eptyling oil paints are excellent, and I really like the pre-mixed colors like dust or engine grease. First, I made a light mixture of brown and washed the panels to make tone differences. After the wash, I used different colors to highlight the details. I blended the colors with a bigger soft round brush. American and British aviation from the Second World War is very well documented, but if you want to build a Japanese aircraft from this time frame, we run into a little more difficulty. Not many original Zeros remain, and restored museum examples vary widely. As far as I know, there is only one all-original A6M flying with its original Sake engine at the Plains of Fame Air Museum at Chino. The rest of the airworthy examples are powered by Pratt & Whitney power plants. The restoration of the cockpit is also very different from the surviving examples. There is a beautifully restored A6M2 in the National Museum of the United States Air Force near Daytona, Ohio. Because it's an early Zero model, a A6M2, I used reference pictures from this museum's website for this build. Unfortunately, this aircraft is not airworthy anymore. The seat belts were really stand out with their bright color, so I made them a little bit darker and dirtier with a mid-brown oil paint. I saw a picture where the backs of the guns were decorated with Japanese kanji characters. This picture and the fridge magnet from Tokyo inspired me to paint something similar. The word Japan in Japanese consists of two kanji characters. These two kanji are pronounced ni and hon, nihon. The first character, the ni, literally means the sun. It looks slightly like the sun in the sky. The second character, the hon, means origin or the root of something. So altogether is sun, origin, the origin of the root of the sun, or which we most of the time see in English as the land of the rising sun. So I painted the two characters onto the backs of the two guns. It was pretty challenging because there was not too much space and it was so tiny. I used a high-quality superfine brush and enamel-based white paint. First I painted the kit guns, so I practiced a bit before painting the better quality 3D printed guns. It is a lovely little detail and luckily it is perfectly visible after I close the cockpit into the fuselage. The gun sight in the 3 set is excellent and highly detailed. It has a foil for the two reflection glasses and two P parts. Though it wasn't easy to build because of its tiny size, the result is absolutely fantastic. So that's all about it. For demonstration, I temporarily glued the 3D cockpit into the port side of the fuselage and the kit cockpit into the starboard side of the fuselage. For me, the obvious winner is the 3D printed cockpit. The kit cockpit out of the box is amazing, and with a little bit of added scratch build we can make it even better. The details are great, and thanks to the excellent engineering, it's super easy to build. The upgrade set is superb and much more detailed than the kit cockpit, but we have to pay a pretty expensive price for it. I didn't really like that the floor is printed with the side walls and the back wall in one block. I like it better when the parts are separate, but I really enjoyed building it. All in all, both the kit cockpit and the 3D printed cockpit are fantastic. Would I buy the upgrade set again? Well, I don't know. It was expensive and almost all the extra details were hidden deep inside the fuselage. However, it was so much fun to build, and I'm really into fine details, so honestly, I don't know, but I probably would. What do you think? Please let me know your thoughts in the comment section. In the next episode, I show you how I built a 3D printed engine and how I upgraded the kit engine. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the like and subscribe with the little bell and you won't miss the upcoming parts of this build. I hope you had a good time, keep modeling, and I see you in the next episode.